Welcome to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast with your host, Brandon Siegel. I'm a published author, speaker, entrepreneur, and private practice strategist dedicated to transforming the way that healthcare functions. This podcast is all about empowering you to create the change you want to see. Let's dive in. Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. This is our quick tip episode. Today, we're talking about identifying your private practice growth liability indicators. How do we know when things are going to go wrong? What's our risk tolerance? How do we develop a bulletproof plan to prevent the worst and prepare for the future? How do we optimize the way that we limit our liability? So let's get into it. Let's have some fun. Let's talk about this. So why should a private practice owner look at liability when planning for growth? The bottom line is you should evaluate liability when accessing growth because unaddressed risks can undermine your scalability, your survival, your profitability, and you got it, sustainability. Liabilities, they create financial instability, operational inefficiencies. They could be compliance gaps. They could be poor client retention. Liabilities include anything that can escalate into costly problems like lawsuits, revenue loss, or reputational damage. So I'll give you an example. Let's say someone comes up to you. They say, Dr. Siegel, I've got the greatest sauna in the world. This sauna is going to reduce cancer by 50%, and you put it into your practice, and you're going to have $100,000 a month of revenue. Trust me. You don't do any analysis. You're like, boom, let's go. Sauna now. You put that sauna in. Let's just say that the sauna gets put together wrong. Let's say that your team doesn't understand what is needed. And now someone with a high cancer rate runs into that sauna, right? That sauna burns the person. They get third-degree burns. They go in. They end up needing surgery. And through that, they never return the same. The byproduct was if they hadn't stepped into that sauna, they would have been fine. I'm giving a total extreme example, but that liability was you didn't see the risk. You didn't see how your employees need to be trained, the different way it needs to be installed. Maybe you didn't have the right release forms. So that's an example. A more relevant example to a lot of you would be a cash flow shortage that can halt your expansion, a HIPAA violation that can incur hefty fines, a high client dropout rate that can erode trust and referrals. Identifying these indicators early can handle increased demand and allow you to make sure that you're handling it properly. Proactive liability management is going to create a stable foundation so that you can grow. Know the risk to the reward. Think with the mindset of what's the worst that can happen. Think with, if I were to name 5 terrible things that could put my company at risk, how do I prevent it? And I play that with everything. When I hire someone, when I expand. Now, that's me. Now, I want to be clear. There are people out there who say, don't listen to Brandon. He's going to give you the slow road to success. I've got the fast road. And you might burn up 3 times, but by the 5th time, you're rolling deep. That's what you have to figure out is right for you. But what I want you to be aware of, these are the most common mistakes owners make when they're growing, when they're scaling their private practice. First and foremost, they fail to plan strategically. Many owners scale without clear business plans. They lead to misallocated resources and unsustainable growth. Without defined goals, timelines, and financial projections, how can you expect to be sustainable? You may overexpand. You may struggle to meet the demand. So your fix, I want you to develop a growth strategy. I want you to have a marketing analysis. I want you to have financial forecasts. I want you to have operational milestones. I want you to have 5 different people that review it and a consultant that signs the approval for you. Utilize resources to ensure you're thinking before you speak, thinking before you act, planning before you do. The other thing we do, we hire too quickly or we hire poorly. So someone comes to you and says, I got this great program. I did this. I built all this stuff. Let's do it. And I'll give you an example. You talk to baby Brandon. Baby Brandon was 25 years old, just built a collegiate licensing. Now, baby Brandon's all ego at this point. So baby Brandon comes to you and says, hey, yeah, I just finished building a collegiate licensing division. It's going to be $10 million over the next 3 years. This is how. Let me do it for you. And you come to baby Brandon, you go, how much is that going to cost? And baby Brandon's so egotistical. He's like, going to cost me, I want 50% of all net profits for the first 10 years. You're like, yes, let's do it. And say, oh, and $100,000 salary. And you go, yes, let's do it. Baby Brandon comes in and he is not performing because you didn't have a plan. You hired too fast. And at the end of the day, rapid hiring to meet demand often results in poor cultural fits, underqualified staffs, and it can harm patient experience and team morale. So when we're looking at this hiring too quickly, a lot of the time it's like, Brandon, we're expanding into Dallas, Texas. There's this huge need, and I've got 50 patients on a wait list. I just hired 5 new speech language pathologists, and they're ready to go tomorrow. And then they come in, and honestly, they shit on everything. Hire slow, fire fast. Do not grow faster than you can budget. January 28th through the 31st, 2026. Coral Gables, Florida. Your business is on the track. Are you ready to hit top speed? The Growth Code Conference is your pit stop for 4 days of proven strategies, precision leadership tools, and a tuned-up growth plan. Leave the slow lane behind and accelerate toward your best season yet. Register now at growthcodeconference.com. Neglecting financial management is another mistake that private practice owners are doing. They're scaling too fast where they don't recognize that they're hiring employees. They're putting salaries in play. I just ran into this with a practice. They hired 5 therapists. They filled the therapists. They filled them with contracts that they thought were in network and they weren't, and they have no money coming in. That is a bad move. Scale often increases overhead. You must monitor cash flow, insurance contracts, budgeting effectively, adjusting your pricing model. This can lead to financial strain or inability to fund growth initiatives. We need to regularly review our financials. We need to work with CPAs. We need to have our budget. We need to have runway for what our future is. I want 6 months of runway before we move forward. There was a time where I almost acquired a practice, and the reason why I didn't acquire the practice was, even though it was a very profitable practice, I did not have enough runway for 6 months of their payroll. And after acquiring their practice, I would be putting myself in jeopardy because if their funding dried up, I wouldn't have the runway to sustain their payroll. Something we got to look at. So the other thing we often do is we overlook the power of marketing and branding. Many owners assume growth will happen organically and they underinvest in marketing. They fail to build their brand, they fail to leverage digital tools, and they fail to look at what the cost of patient acquisition is. We need to create a marketing plan. We need to look at what online presence, patient referrals, and community engagement is going to do to help you get from here to there. Scaling too fast, that is one of the biggest mistakes you make. You expand services, locations, and staff too quickly. It can overwhelm operations, it can degrade your quality, and it can strain your pocketbook. You got it. We need to scale in gradients. We need to scale incrementally. We need to test and measure and produce. Ensure that operational stability before you expand further. As we look at one of the mistakes that private practice owners are making, this is the one that drives me crazy. We grow and we ignore our patient experience. In the rush to growth, owners are prioritizing volume over quality. They are leading to longer times, rushed appointments, crappy waiting rooms, and poor communication. And this erodes patient trust. Slow grow, people, slow grow. The other thing I'm seeing is we're underutilizing technology. We're failing to adopt fast enough how to optimize our practice management, how to optimize our innovation, how to optimize inefficiencies with technology so that we optimize efficiency. We reduce our errors, we optimize and scale without bottlenecks. Invest in your technology, streamline your scheduling, streamline your billing, streamline your patient communication. Know what you know and know what you don't know. Neglecting our team culture is another problem. We don't recognize it. If I add 5 new employees, I can change things. Growth can strain existing staff. It can lead to resentment, turnover, burnout. If owners don't prioritize communication, professional development, and that work-life experience, we can lose it. Foster a positive culture. Offer growth opportunities. Check in with your staff. Address those concerns. And then one other thing that I see is we're not delegating efficiently. We're not delegating effectively. We're not managing who, what, how, why, when. This limits our ability to focus on strategic growth. So we need to hire and train and delegate, and we need to focus on leadership, vision, and results. One of the things that's really important is we have to look at our compliance and regulations. A lot of the time we're ignoring compliance and regulations. And honestly, we're scaling without staying updated on healthcare regulations, and it can lead to legal issues, penalties, and it can derail your growth. So work with legal and compliance experts. Look at all of your processes. Look at the way that regulatory standards are impacting your sandbox. Understand your liability indicators. Understand your growth liability, your red flags, and signal potential risks that could derail your private practice scale, profitability, sustainability. These can include operational inefficiencies, financial mismanagement, compliance gaps, or even client retention issues. Spotting them early, addressing vulnerabilities, and making sure we don't end up in crisis. So one of the things I like to do is I like to assess our financial health as we're protecting our growth approach. We're looking at our cash flow issues. We're looking at our over-reliance on one revenue stream, and we're looking at high overhead. I want to say that again. Cash flow, over-reliance on one revenue stream, meaning you're all in on Kaiser Permanente, and high overhead, meaning that we have a high rent, high admin, other things like that. We need to evaluate our operational efficiency. We need to look at where burnout is coming. We got to schedule, making sure our scheduling is efficient, optimized, there's no bottlenecks. And we need to remove manual processes. We need to automate and utilize technology to innovate. Check your compliance, look at your licensing gaps, look at your violation potentials, your inadequate insurances. Did you know that your insurances must be changed and evaluated as you grow? Monitor client satisfaction. Monitor client retention. Look at high client dropout rates if you're growing. Look at low referral rates or the shift in referrals from specific referral sources. And then we need a plan for scale. We need to look at our systems, our market saturation, and our no growth metrics. Where are we blind? Did you know in 2024, a medical economics report indicated that private practices indicating and identifying growth liability indicators had likely higher staff turnover, and they grew 15% slower if they weren't identifying those growth liability indicators. Really important. And so, in the words of Lord Kelvin, a physicist and engineer, what you do not measure, you cannot control. Thank you for tuning into this episode of our Quick Tip Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. Please like us, subscribe, and don't forget, together we can thrive, not just survive. Thank you for tuning in to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. I'm incredibly grateful to each and every one of you. exciting news. We're now available everywhere, from Spotify to Apple Podcasts to YouTube or anywhere you like to listen to your podcasts. So watch, listen, and reach out. If you love this episode, please drop a 5-star review. It truly means the world to me. Are you looking for more ways to elevate your practice? If so, now is your chance. Reach out, go to my website, or email me at brandon@wellnessworksmp.com. And remember, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving.